I expected Sadie Whitlock to scream when she opened the door, maybe cry a little, maybe smack me on the arm for not warning her I'd landed from Spain 3 weeks ahead of schedule. If I was really lucky, she'd throw her arms around me hard enough to send my carry-on rolling back down the hall to flatten somebody's Amazon delivery. What I did not expect was for my best friend of 12 years to take one look at me standing in the bright Saturday sunlight outside her apartment, let her coffee mug slip from her fingers onto the welcome mat, breathe my name like she'd been holding it under her tongue for a year, and kiss me. It wasn't a polite kiss. It wasn't some sleepy, half-conscious peck on the cheek she could laugh off later. Sadie closed the distance in one motion, fisted both hands in the front of my jacket, rose up on her toes, and kissed me like there was no friendship left to protect. No careful boundary between us, no ocean I'd just flown across, no years of pretending neither of us noticed when a room got too quiet. For about 4 seconds, my brain simply shut off. Then it rebooted with a single, blinding thought. So this is what missing someone feels like once it finally runs out of places to hide. My name is Caleb Turner. I was 29 that morning, jet-lagged enough to forget my own zip code, and still clutching a paper bag of airport cinnamon rolls, because Sadie had once informed me with total seriousness that love was mostly just remembering someone's snack order. I'd spent the previous year in Barcelona working as a freelance architectural photographer. Old churches, narrow balconies, sunlight pooling on stone. Couples kissing in plazas, like they'd personally invented the idea. I told everyone it was the opportunity of a lifetime. That part was true. It was also true that I'd taken the contract because staying in Chicago meant admitting I was in love with my best friend and had absolutely no plan for what to do about it. Sadie was 28, a children's book illustrator with wild honey brown curls, paint permanently lodged under her fingernails, and a laugh that had carried me through my father's funeral. Two career flops, and one deeply regrettable phase where I believed linen pants made me look European. They did not. For 12 years we'd been each other's emergency contact, movie date, wedding plus one, apartment painting crew, and joint bad decision prevention committee. Everyone assumed we were together. We corrected them. Eventually we stopped correcting them and just started saying, "It's complicated," which is what cowards say when the truth is sitting right there in a cardigan, telling you your haircut looks stupid. The morning I left for Barcelona, Sadie drove me to O'Hare at 5 a.m. Wearing sunglasses, even though the sun hadn't come up yet, cracking jokes the entire drive to keep either of us from saying anything real. At the curb, she hugged me 3 seconds longer than a hug like that should last. "Don't come back with a Spanish girlfriend," she muttered into my shoulder. I laughed because apparently I was an idiot. "Why, you jealous?" She pulled back smiling like I'd wandered right past a door she'd left open for me. "Just allergic to smug happiness." Then she got in her car and drove off before I could work up the nerve to say anything brave. A year went by. We video called every Sunday. She showed me sketches. I showed her rooftops. She mailed me peanut butter because apparently Spain had personally offended her by not stocking the right brand. I mailed her a small ceramic orange from Valencia, and she declared it ugly enough to be emotionally significant. But things shifted quietly. She stopped mentioning dates. I stopped asking. Sometimes our calls would go silent, and instead of rushing to fill it, we just sit there, her face lit blue by her laptop screen. My rented apartment glowing behind me, both of us grinning at nothing in particular. 3 weeks before my contract ended, my last client backed out. I could have stayed, wandered a few beaches, pretended to be a man who enjoyed his own company. Instead, I changed my flight. I told no one, not even Sadie, especially not Sadie, because I'd already built the whole surprise like a scene from a movie. I'd knock, she'd fling the door open, she'd scream. I'd say something smooth like, "Miss me." She'd roll her eyes, we'd laugh, I'd hand over the cinnamon rolls. And then if the universe showed some mercy and my nerve actually arrived on time, I'd finally tell her the truth, that I hadn't left Chicago for distance from the city. I'd left because every time she fell asleep on my couch, all I wanted was to brush the hair off her cheek and kiss her awake. So there I was, 17 in the morning, standing outside apartment 3B with a suitcase, a backpack, and a heart behaving with all the dramatic nonsense I usually made fun of in other people. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and somebody's toast. Sunlight poured through the stairwell window. 2 floors down a dog barked twice and gave up. I knocked. Quick footsteps, a thud, and then Sadie hollered, "1 second, if you're selling religion, I already have enough anxiety." I grinned despite myself. The deadbolt turned. The door swung open. She was barefoot in denim shorts and my old grey Northwestern sweatshirt. The one I'd accused her of stealing back in 2019, and she'd accused me of emotionally abandoning. Hair piled on her head and pinned with a pencil. A smear of blue paint across her wrist. For half a second she looked annoyed. Then she saw me. The annoyance vanished. Her mouth fell open. The color drained out of her face and rushed back all at once. "Caleb, surprise," I said, lifting the paper bag. "I brought," that was as far as I got. The mug slipped out of her hand, hit the mat, bounced once, and rolled to a stop against my shoe without breaking. Sadie crossed the threshold, grabbed me, and kissed me. The cinnamon rolls crumpled between us. My suitcase tipped over. Somewhere down the hall a door opened, then shut immediately, which was fair. If I'd witnessed that kiss from the outside, I'd have retreated and minded my own business with the same religious discipline. Her lips were warm. Her fingers tightened in my jacket. She made a small, involuntary sound against my mouth that nearly took my legs out from under me. And then, just as suddenly, she pulled back. We stood there breathing hard, foreheads almost touching. Her eyes were wide. Mine probably looked like I'd just been hit by an extremely attractive vehicle. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I blinked. "For the mug," a shaky little laugh escaped her. "For ambushing you with my face. I've had worse welcomes. Caleb, what, I'm being emotionally flexible right now." She stepped back, pressing 2 fingers to her own lips, like she couldn't quite believe what they'd done without asking her permission first. But that was the thing, none of it had felt like an accident. It had felt like a decision that had been standing at the door a lot longer than I had. "You're early," she said. 3 weeks. "You didn't tell me." That was the surprise part of the plan. I looked her over, and for one unguarded second I saw everything about her I'd missed, the humor, the softness. The way she tried so hard to look unbothered, while her eyes gave the whole thing away. "You look," she started, then stopped. "Exhausted, pale, like international travel chewed you up and spat you back out. Like home," she said instead. The hallway went quiet. There are moments a person hands you the truth so gently you almost miss the weight of it. I swallowed. "Sadie." She glanced back into the apartment, then at me again, and something shifted across her face, not regret exactly. Fear. "Come in," she said. I picked the mug up off the mat, righted my suitcase, and followed her inside. Her apartment was exactly Sadie, and nothing like how I remembered it. Plants crowding every windowsill, sketches taped along the walls. A half-finished illustration spread across the dining table of a little fox standing under a street lamp, holding an umbrella over a bird. Something in my chest pulled tight. On the kitchen counter, beside 2 full, untouched cups of coffee, sat a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across the front in her handwriting. Not Turner, not idiot, not European linen victim. Just Caleb. Sadie saw me clock it. She moved too fast, stepping between me and the counter, which of course only made me look harder. The envelope wasn't sealed. A folded sheet peeked out of the top. On the exposed line, written in dark blue ink, I managed to read 7 words before her hand slid over them. "I can't keep pretending I don't love you." She went completely still. So did I. The kiss had already knocked the wind out of me. That sentence stopped the whole room cold. Neither of us moved for a long second. Sadie's palm stayed flat over the letter, like she could press the sentence back into the paper by sheer will. I stood 2 feet away, jet-lagged, smelling like cinnamon, and more awake than I'd been in a full year. "I didn't see that," I said. Sadie stared at me, then glanced pointedly at my face, which I'm sure had cycled through every human expression except calm. "You're an architectural photographer. Your entire job is seeing things." "Fine, I saw it." Her eyes squeezed shut. "Great, but only the first line. That is, statistically, the worst possible line to only see. I'd argue otherwise." She opened one eye. I took a small, careful step closer. It was a strong opener. "Caleb, what if this is a formal critique? I'd say it grabbed the reader immediately." She groaned and buried her face in both hands. And there she was, my Sadie, mortified and brilliant, standing in a sunlit kitchen with blue paint on her wrist, wearing my sweatshirt like it still belonged to both of us. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to reach for her. I wanted to say every brave thing I'd packed and unpacked in my head for the past 12 months. Instead, I set the paper bag on the counter and asked softly, "Was that for me?" She lowered her hands. The answer was already written all over her face. "I was going to mail it," she admitted. "When?" "Today." Something in my chest did something foolish and painful. "Today," she nodded, eyes fixed somewhere past my shoulder. "I made myself a deal. If I couldn't say it out loud while you were gone, I'd write it down. And if I couldn't even send it, then I had to stop. Waiting." The words sat there between us. Waiting for me, for courage, for the version of us that had been living in every almost touch, every too long goodbye hug, every Sunday call neither of us wanted to be the one to end. I leaned back against the counter because my knees weren't fully cooperating. "What does stop waiting mean?" Sadie wrapped her arms around herself. "It means I was going to let you go." The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. Out on the street, traffic hissed by. Somewhere in the building, a kid laughed at something. Ordinary life just kept right on going, which felt frankly rude. I stared at her. "You were going to let me go without ever telling me." "I was telling you. In a letter you weren't supposed to read. You were supposed to be in Spain. I took an early flight. I noticed, due to the kissing. Despite everything, I laughed. So did she, and it cracked the tension just enough for both of us to actually breathe. Then she looked down, suddenly shy. "I shouldn't have done that." The kiss, yes. "Why?" "Because you showed up expecting cinnamon rolls and a normal best friend reunion. And I attacked you like a woman in a 19th century train station. I brought the cinnamon rolls because I was planning to confess that I'm in love with you." So honestly, the tone matched. Sadie froze. Her eyes snapped up to mine. What? There it was. No pulling it back. No ocean left to hide behind. No clever joke wide enough to stand in. I pushed a hand through my hair. "That came out less smoothly than I'd rehearsed. You were going to confess your love to me. Yes, with pastries." "I know my strengths." She just stared, and then her mouth started to tremble, not with laughter this time, something softer. "You love me?" The question nearly undid me. Not because it was hard to answer, but because she looked like she genuinely hadn't known, as if I hadn't loved her in every practical, ridiculous, devoted way a person can love someone. As if I hadn't memorized exactly how she took her coffee. As if I hadn't flown across an ocean with a bag of cinnamon rolls because the airport bakery opened at dawn and she loved them more than her own dignity. I stepped closer. She didn't move away. "I love you," I said. "I'm in love with you, Sadie. I have been for so long I don't even know where the friendship stopped and this started." Her breath caught. "And I left," I went on, voice rougher now, "because I was scared I'd wreck us. I thought putting an ocean between us would shrink it down, make it manageable." "Did it?" "No," I smiled, faint and a little rueful. "It just turned me into a man who photographed beautiful buildings and wished you were standing in front of every single one of them." Her eyes filled. "Oh, Caleb." I reached for her hand, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers slid into mine like they'd been rehearsing it in secret for months. I tried dating, she confessed. Something hot and unreasonable flared through me, but I held still. She shot me a look. Don't make that face. What face? The tragic nobleman face. I went on exactly 2 dates. One guy talked for 40 straight minutes about cold plunge therapy. The other asked if illustrating children's books basically counted as doodling. May they both step in wet socks for the rest of their lives. That's oddly vicious. I'm jet-lagged and newly possessive. Her smile turned slow and a little dangerous. Newly, I ran my thumb over her knuckles. Fine, historically possessive, but quietly and with excellent manners. She stepped in closer. Your manners weren't excellent when you glared at that bartender on my 26th birthday. He called you sweetheart. You call me sweetheart. Not like he did. Her smile softened. No, not like you do. The air between us shifted again. She was close enough now that I could count the tiny flecks of gold in her brown eyes, close enough to catch coffee and vanilla soap, and that impossible, familiar something that is just Sadie. The scent that had haunted every rented room I'd slept in for a year. Her free hand rose and curled around the collar of my jacket. I missed you, she whispered. I closed my eyes for half a second. I missed you enough that it embarrassed me. Good. My eyes opened. Good. I wanted you a little embarrassed. That's the kind of romance you're getting from me. I contain multitudes. I laughed under my breath, and then she leaned in, not like before, not out of shock or impulse, but slow, deliberate, a question she was choosing to answer herself. I met her halfway. The second kiss was quieter. No dropped mugs, no toppled suitcases, no stunned neighbor politely pretending not to eavesdrop. Just Sadie's fingers curling into my shirt, my hand finding the curve of her waist, the small, stunned relief of finally touching someone exactly the way you'd imagined for years, and discovering your imagination hadn't done her justice. She tasted like coffee. She fit against me like an answer to something I'd been asking for a very long time. When we finally broke apart, she stayed close, her forehead pressed to my chin. I wrote 4 pages, she murmured, of the letter. Any chance I get to read it, she hesitated. Maybe someday. I showed up in person. That feels like it earns me at least page 2. Page 2 is embarrassing. I crossed an ocean. You took a commercial flight. Internationally. She laughed into my chest, and I wrapped both arms around her. For the first time since I'd left Chicago, something inside me finally stopped bracing. We stood like that in her kitchen until the coffee went cold. Then Sadie pulled back just enough to look at me, her chin tipped up, her eyes doing that thing where they asked a question her mouth hadn't decided on yet. So what now? She asked. It was a terrifying question. It was also the only one that mattered. I reached up and brushed a curl away from her cheek, finally, after approximately 12 years of wanting to. Her eyes tracked my hand like she couldn't quite believe it was allowed. Now, I said, I take you to breakfast. Her eyebrows climbed. That's your plan. It's part 1. I'm starving, I'm in love, and I've been running on airplane pretzels since yesterday. And after breakfast, we figure out how to stop being cowards. She considered this with the gravity it deserved, then reached over and picked up the cinnamon roll bag from the counter and tucked it under one arm. With her other hand, she kept hold of mine, didn't make a thing of it, just kept it. Okay, she said. But for the record, if this goes badly, I'm keeping your sweatshirt. I smiled. Sadie, sweetheart, I said, squeezing her hand once. If this goes badly, that sweatshirt is going to be the least of what you keep. Breakfast with Sadie had always been dangerous. Not romantically, not officially at least, but emotionally, absolutely. She ordered like a woman preparing for a siege. Pancakes, eggs, hash browns, a side of fruit she had every intention of ignoring, and black coffee she'd immediately ruin with enough cream to qualify it as dessert. Then she'd spend the rest of the meal methodically stealing bites off my plate and claiming everything tasted better because it came from my side of the table. That morning, we walked to Miller's on Damon, hand in hand. It should have felt strange, 12 years of friendship reconfiguring itself into something new with every step down the sidewalk. It didn't feel strange. That was the terrifying part. Her fingers between mine felt less like a beginning than a correction, like something that had always been slightly off had finally been put right. Chicago was loud and golden around us. Buses exhaled at their curbs. A cyclist hurled something unprintable at a taxi. The wind came off the lake and lifted Sadie's curls in every direction, and without thinking, without deciding to, I reached over and tucked one behind her ear. She stopped walking. "What?" I asked. "You just did that." "I did. You've never done that before." "I have wanted to do that approximately 9,000 times." Her mouth curved. "Only 9,000." I rounded down. "I'm trying to seem stable." She laughed, and I felt it move through my ribcage like something tuning itself to the right frequency. We kept walking. At Miller's, the hostess glanced at our joined hands and said with complete calm, "Finally." Sadie went pink. I pointed at the woman. "That is unprofessional." "Honey," the hostess said, already pulling menus, "I've been seating you two for 6 years. This is a community victory." Sadie buried herself behind her menu the moment we slid into our booth. "I forgot the entire neighborhood has been emotionally invested in this." "Forgot?" "The dry cleaner asked me if you were my wife in 2021. You told him yes because he gave you a discount. He respected commitment." She lowered the menu just enough that I could see her eyes. "You liked pretending." I could have deflected. It would have been easy, some joke, some deflection, some small sleight of hand that kept us both comfortable. Instead, I looked at her across the worn little table, sunlight cutting a stripe across her cheek, and answered honestly. "Yeah," I said. "I did." Her expression shifted. Something soft and careful arrived in her eyes, something she was trying very hard not to show. She lifted the menu back up. I let her have the moment. Our waitress appeared. Sadie ordered enough food for a small committee. I ordered an omelette and toast. "And the cinnamon rolls?" the waitress asked, nodding at the airport bag sitting on the table between us like contraband. Sadie pulled it closer. "Private property. She's feral before noon," I explained, specifically about pastry and emotional avoidance. "Only about those two things specifically," Sadie confirmed. The waitress smiled like she'd seen worse and left us to it. For a minute, we just sat there looking at each other. Which probably sounds unremarkable if you haven't spent a year wanting to look at someone without a laptop screen and a 3-second delay between you. I'd memorized the lag in our calls, the way her image sometimes froze mid-sentence with her mouth half open, the odd blue-white glow of her monitor reflected in her glasses. I had looked at a version of her for 12 months that stuttered and pixelated and cut out at the worst possible moments. Now she was in front of me. Real, present, mine, not yet, maybe soon. Maybe if I could manage not to ruin it in the first 48 hours by being visibly terrified. Sadie nudged my ankle under the table. "You're thinking too loudly. I'm thinking I don't know how to do this. Breakfast, you've watched me handle pancakes many times." "Barely, I mean this." I gestured between us. "Us being this. Being more than me neither," she said simply. The honesty of it settled something in my chest. "I keep waiting for someone to come in and announce we're being ridiculous." "Like a friendship referee," she agreed, with a whistle. "If there is one, they're already late." "We've kissed twice." Her eyes moved to my mouth, brief and then away. "3 times, actually." I leaned forward. "When was the third?" "In the hallway." After the first one, before I pulled back, there was a second small one. A small, separate one. That was part of the first kiss. No, it had its own distinct emotional arc. "You're counting bonus kisses." "I'm an illustrator," she said, picking up her fork. "Details matter." The food arrived and saved neither of us. Sadie poured syrup on her pancakes with the focus of a person conducting a very serious experiment. I watched her do it and felt something so sharp and tender move through me that it almost registered as pain. "What?" she asked, mouth already full. "I love you." She went still. Fork halfway to her plate, syrup pooling, everything frozen for one long second. I hadn't planned to say it again so soon. It had simply arrived, apparently tired of waiting for a more strategic moment. Sadie swallowed. "You can't just say that while I'm eating pancakes." "Why not?" "Because I will associate maple syrup with emotional vulnerability for the rest of my life." "Good. Then breakfast can be our thing." Her smile wobbled at the edges. "Caleb, say it again." All the lightness went out of me. I reached across the table, palm up. She set her hand in mine without hesitating, as if the gesture had been waiting in her muscles. "I love you," I said, slower this time, like I wanted each word to land somewhere it could stay. Not as a reflex from the kissing, not because I'm jet-lagged and emotionally compromised. I love you in the ordinary ways and the terrifying ones. I love you when you steal my fries without asking. I love you when you send 6 consecutive voice notes about one bad font choice. I love you when you're brave enough to kiss someone in a doorway, and I love you when you're hiding behind a menu. Her eyes had gone bright. She was holding very still. "And," I added, because she looked dangerously close to crying, and I needed to give her a way out, "I love you despite the fact that you once told me, unprompted, that my passport photo made me look like a haunted substitute teacher." A laugh broke out of her, watery and slightly undignified and perfect. "It did, I stand by it. I was 24. You were going through something, visually." She squeezed my hand, then lifted it and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. "Right there in the booth at Miller's, with syrup on the table between us and her pancakes going cold." The gesture was so easy, so casual, she probably didn't even register how completely it took me apart. "I love you too," she said. "I think I loved you before I had a name for it." And then I found the name and I looked right at it and just kept pretending I didn't. Because if I said it and it broke something between us, if I lost you, you won't. Her expression sharpened. "Don't promise that like it's a simple thing," I nodded, pulling the easy comfort back. "Okay. You're right." She looked down at our joined hands, tracing the lines of my fingers like she was studying them for a sketch. "You leaving hurt," she said quietly. The words went where they were meant to. "I know." "No, I mean," she stopped, rearranged. "I was proud of you. I wanted you to go. I wanted you to have Barcelona and the churches and the rooftops and the whole beautiful, inconvenient thing." Her thumb moved across the back of my hand. But some part of me kept thinking, if he can get on the plane that easily, maybe I'm not enough of a reason to stay. I sat back like she'd placed her hand flat on my chest and pushed. "I didn't leave easily." Her gaze came up. "I cried," I said. "In an airport bathroom after security." Sadie blinked. "You," quietly. With what I considered to be significant dignity, all circumstances considered. "There's no dignified airport bathroom crying, Caleb. I know that now. At the time I was doing my best." "I looked," I said, "like a man being haunted by a Cinnabon." Her lips pressed together, fighting it. "That is genuinely terrible." It was a low point. I turned her hand over, drawing my thumb across her palm. "I thought leaving was the principled choice. Because I wanted you so much it frightened me. And I couldn't see any version of staying that didn't end in me either confessing and losing you, or saying nothing and slowly turning into someone bitter and resentful who still showed up to help you move furniture. So I took the contract, and I told myself it was brave, and I got on the plane." She was quiet for a moment. "Was it?" "No," I shook my head slowly. "Brave was changing the flight and coming back." She studied me for a long moment. Then she picked up her plate, slid out of her side of the booth, came around, and sat down right next to me. "No announcement. Just close." her thigh against mine, her shoulder tucking under my arm with the ease of something that had been practiced without either of us realizing we were practicing. The diner kept moving around us, forks ringing, coffee pouring, two tables over some man lodging a formal complaint about his eggs. Our vinyl booth became its own small country with a population of two. Sadie leaned her head against my shoulder. I'm still a little mad at you. You should be. I'm also very happy. I'm planning to encourage that one aggressively. She tilted her face up. Start now. So I kissed her in the booth at Miller's, with syrup on the table and my omelette going cold, and at least one elderly woman 2 booths over producing a small, delighted round of applause. Sadie laughed into my mouth. I smiled against hers. The world for once seemed to have read the room. When we finally broke apart, her phone buzzed on the table. She ignored it. It buzzed again. Then a third time, the screen briefly lighting the space between us. I glanced down before I'd made a conscious decision to. A calendar notification. White text on a blue banner. Final portfolio review, Seattle contract, 2:00 p.m. Sadie saw it the same moment I did. Her body went still against my side, a particular kind of still, the kind that comes from someone deciding very quickly how to speak. Seattle, I asked. She reached for the phone slowly, like it had done something she hadn't authorized. It's not what it looks like. I looked at the words again. It looks like Seattle. It is geographically that. I waited. Outside, a bus rumbled past and the diner windows shivered faintly. Sadie pushed her plate to the center of the table and wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. There's a small children's publisher out there, she said carefully. They've been looking for an in-house illustrator. 6-month contract, possibly longer if the work goes well. The sentence was reasonable. It was even good. Sadie deserved publishers chasing her, deserved studios with enormous windows and people who understood that illustrating a dragon in a raincoat was a legitimate artistic calling. None of that was in question, but I had just spent 12 months missing her across an ocean, and the word longer landed somewhere it was going to bruise. When did you apply? I asked. She studied the table. 2 months ago. 2 months ago, I had been in Barcelona photographing a restored Art Nouveau theatre, and during our Sunday call I'd mentioned, offhandedly, that I might extend my contract if another client materialized. I remembered her smile that afternoon, too bright, too immediate, the smile of a person who'd already made a quiet decision. You thought I wasn't coming back, I said. I thought you were building a life there, the work, the city, you looked settled. I was trying to look happy for your benefit. A short, painful laugh. That is so completely and stupidly us. The waitress came by, read the atmosphere in approximately 1 second, refilled our coffees without being asked, and left at speed. Sadie turned her mug in a slow circle. I didn't apply because of you. Not only because of you, it's a genuinely good opportunity, and I know that. I know. But, she exhaled. Part of me thought that maybe I needed to build something for myself that wasn't organized around waiting for your name to appear on my phone every Sunday. She deserved to say that. It still cut like she'd meant it to. I looked at her sitting beside me, her knee still pressed warm against mine, and I thought about how easy it would be to make this about fear, about timing, about another city and another excuse, and all the careful, reasonable distance we were both apparently talented at manufacturing. I thought about it and then I didn't. What do you want? I asked. She glanced sideways at me. That's a loaded question before noon. I mean it. I know, her voice dropped. This morning I had a plan. Mail the letter, take the interview, try to become the version of myself who doesn't cry over a man in a different time zone. That was the plan. She paused. And then you knocked on the door. She looked at me then, really looked, open and frustrated, and so beautiful it made the entire West Coast feel like an abstraction. Now you're here, she said. Now you're holding my hand, and you keep saying things that make my chest hurt. And I am furious about the timing, Caleb. I'm genuinely furious. Because it's everything I've wanted. At the exact moment you decided to stop wanting it. Yes, her voice caught slightly. At the exact moment, I turned my hand over under hers and held it properly. Don't stop. She looked down at our hands. Wanting it, wanting me, I swallowed. Wanting us. And wanting Seattle too, if that's what you want. I'm not asking you to give up a good thing because I finally figured myself out. I don't want to be the reason you make yourself smaller. She was quiet for a moment. That sounds very emotionally evolved. I practiced on the flight. Somewhere over Nebraska, I had a fairly significant spiral and came out the other side with a new perspective. A reluctant smile found her. Then she leaned her forehead against my shoulder and said, quietly, I don't want to lose this on the same day. I finally got to have it. I turned and pressed my lips to her hair. You didn't get it today, I said. You named it today. She went still against me. I hadn't planned to say it. I hadn't known I believed it until the words were already out, but they were true. Whatever this was between us hadn't been born in her doorway this morning, or in this vinyl booth. It had been living for years in borrowed sweatshirts and late-night phone calls, and the particular way she always knew, without asking, without being told, exactly when I was pretending to be fine. Sadie lifted her head slowly and looked at me. You say things like that, she said, and then just expect me to keep functioning. No, I'm hoping to become a major inconvenience. Her smile finally reached her eyes. We left Miller's with half our food in boxes and the cinnamon rolls still untouched, because Sadie claimed airport pastry required a ceremonial setting. On the walk back, she didn't let go of my hand. Neither did I at a crosswalk. She leaned into my side while we waited for the light. Her curls brushed my jaw. I looked down at her and had the sudden ridiculous thought that I would follow this woman anywhere. Seattle, Spain, the aisle of a grocery store, while she debated cereal for 20 minutes. She caught me looking. What? I'm thinking about kissing you. We're at a crosswalk. I'm aware there are children. They should learn about commitment. She laughed, but when the signal changed, she didn't move right away. Instead, she tugged me down by the front of my jacket and kissed me in the middle of the morning with traffic idling and some guy on a bike saying, Let's go, rom-com. Sadie pulled back, cheeks pink. Community victory. Citywide, apparently. Back at her apartment, the letter still sat on the counter. My suitcase still lay by the door. The mug still rested on the table, washed now, as if we were pretending it hadn't been a casualty of passion. Sadie checked the time. I have 40 minutes before the review. Do you want me to go? Her answer came too fast. No, that one word settled something in me. Then I'll stay. She nodded, then became suddenly busy gathering her portfolio pages, smoothing them, rearranging them back. I watched her hands shake. Hey, I said, I'm fine. You're alphabetizing foxes, she looked down. They have names. Of course they do. This one is Benedict. Benedict looks anxious. Benedict has a complicated inner life. I came up behind her slowly and set my hands on her shoulders. Sadie. She exhaled like she'd been waiting for permission. Her body softened back against me just a little. I ran my thumbs along the tense line of her shoulders. Careful, steady. You are brilliant, I said near her ear. Not because Seattle noticed. Not because a publisher approves, because you make lonely kids feel like the world has secret doors. Her hand came up and covered mine. You kept my postcards, she said quietly. All of them. I drew those for you. I know. No. She turned in my arms. I told myself they were jokes, little updates. But really, I wanted to put something in your apartment that came from me. My chest tightened. You did. She touched the center of my shirt right over my heart. Did I? I covered her hand. Everywhere. The portfolio review alarm chimed again, softer this time. Neither of us moved. Then Sadie rose onto her toes and kissed me. Slow at first, then deeper, like she was making herself a promise and using my mouth to seal it. When she pulled away, her eyes were bright but determined. Okay, she said, I'm going to do this interview. Good. and I'm not deciding anything out of fear, even better. And afterward, she bit her lip. Afterward, you and I are going to go on an actual date. I smiled. Was breakfast not a date? Breakfast was a mutual emotional ambush with hash browns. Fair, I mean, a real date tonight. No hiding behind best friend habits. No pretending. You ask me properly. I say yes dramatically. Maybe I wear lipstick. My heart lifted so fast it almost hurt. I stepped back, gave a small ridiculous bow, and held out my hand. Sadie Whitlock, I said, will you go on a date with me tonight? She placed her hand in mine, eyes shining. Yes, Caleb Turner, she said dramatically, recklessly, and with lipstick. Her laptop rang the Seattle call. Sadie squeezed my hand once, then sat down in front of the screen. I moved to the couch close enough that she could see me if she looked over, and she did. Right before answering, she glanced back at me, not asking me to save her, asking me to stay. So I stayed. Sadi's interview lasted 47 minutes. I know because I counted every one of them from her couch, pretending not to listen and failing completely. She was nervous for the first 5. Then they asked about Benedict, the anxious fox, and Sadi lit up. That was the thing about her. She could doubt herself right up until somebody gave her a reason to talk about the work. Then she became impossible not to believe in. She explained color palettes and lonely children and how small creatures in big worlds deserved brave endings. At one point, she glanced back at me. I smiled. She smiled too, quick and secret, then turned back to the screen. By the time she ended the call, I already knew. They loved you, I said. She shut the laptop and sat very still. They offered me the contract. My stomach dropped and lifted at the same time. Sadie, that's incredible. It starts in 4 weeks. 4 weeks. After a year away from her, it felt like a cruel joke, but her face wasn't asking me to panic. It was asking me to be honest. So I crossed the room, crouched in front of her chair, and took both her hands. What do you want? I asked again. She looked down at our fingers. I want to say yes. I nodded once even though it hurt. Then say yes. Her eyes filled. Caleb, I mean it. My voice wasn't perfectly steady, but it was mine. I love you, not the convenient version of you. Not the version that stays in Chicago, so I don't have to be scared. You, the woman who gets offered contracts because she makes anxious foxes feel like heroes. A tear slipped down her cheek. I wiped it with my thumb. But I also want you to know, I said, I'm done using distance as an excuse. If you go to Seattle, I visit. You visit, we call, we plan, we choose each other on purpose. She searched my face. And if it turns into longer, then we figure out longer. That easy. No, I smiled. But I'm hoping we're finally done only doing easy things. Sadi leaned forward and kissed me. It was not a goodbye kiss that mattered. It was frightened and tender and full of yes. That night we went on our first official date. Sadie wore red lipstick. I wore the only shirt in my suitcase that didn't look like I'd slept upright over the Atlantic, which was technically true. I picked her up at her own apartment door because she insisted on proper romantic structure. And when she opened it, she looked so beautiful I forgot the speech I had prepared. She tilted her head. You're supposed to say something charming. I had something. It died. Tragic. Sadie Whitlock. You look devastating. Her smile softened, recovered nicely. We went to a tiny Italian restaurant with candles on the tables and terrible parking. We ordered too much pasta. She got sauce on her wrist, exactly where the blue paint had been that morning, and I reached across the table to wipe it away with my napkin. She watched me do it. What? I asked. I'm trying to get used to being touched by you like this. Good or bad? Good, her voice lowered. So good it makes me want to cry a little, which is inconvenient in public. I set the napkin down and took her hand. We can go slow. She squeezed my fingers. I don't want to go slow because I'm unsure. I want to go slow because I want to notice everything. So we did. We noticed everything. The first walk home as something more than friends. The first time, she slipped her hand into my back pocket and then blushed like she hadn't meant to be bold. The first kiss outside her building that started sweet and ended with my forehead against the brick, because I needed a second to remember how doors worked. 4 weeks later, I helped her pack for Seattle. It was awful. It was also strangely beautiful. Sadi labeled boxes with things like books, kitchen, and emotionally important nonsense. I found my old sweatshirt in the last category. "Excuse me," I said. "That is a historic textile." She folded it carefully. "It's coming with me." "So am I said. She turned. For the first week, I clarified. "If you want, I can work from anywhere for a few days. I'll help you settle in, assemble furniture badly, carry heavy things with masculine overconfidence." Her face did that soft, dangerous thing again. "You'd come. Sadi, I came home early from another continent because I missed your face. Seattle is not going to scare me." She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around my waist. "I love you," she said into my chest. I kissed the top of her head. "I know." She pinched my side. "Ow, I mean I love you too. Better." Seattle was grey and green and smelled like rain, even when the sun came out. Her new apartment had a view of a brick wall and one heroic slice of water if you leaned dangerously out the kitchen window. I built her bookshelf, incorrectly twice. She made coffee on the floor because we hadn't unpacked mugs. On my last night before flying back to Chicago, we ate takeout noodles from cartons and sat shoulder to shoulder against the couch. "I hate tomorrow," she said. "Me too, but I don't hate us," I turned to her. "Neither do I." She looked scared but not uncertain. There was a difference. I was learning that. "We choose each other?" she asked. "On purpose," I said. Then she kissed me under the cheap paper lantern we'd hung crookedly in her living room, and the room felt less temporary. 6 months later, Sad's contract became permanent. By then, I had photographed 3 buildings in Seattle, 2 in Portland, and 1 hotel lobby in Vancouver, because apparently love had made me excellent at finding work near her zip code. We were still long distance sometimes. Sometimes it was hard. Sometimes flights got delayed, calls were missed, and one of us got quiet because old fears knew the way back. But we got better at opening the door before fear knocked too loudly. By the following spring, I gave up my Chicago lease and moved into a Seattle apartment with too many plants, one anxious fox print framed over the desk, and Sad's red lipstick on a mug that had somehow survived the move. No grand speech, no dramatic ultimatum, just 2 keys on the same ring. One sunny morning, almost exactly a year after I surprised her, I woke to find Sadie barefoot in the kitchen, wearing my grey sweatshirt and sketching at the counter. The window was open. Coffee steamed beside her. Her curls were a disaster. She looked up and smiled. "Morning, best friend," she said. I came up behind her, wrapped my arms around her waist, and kissed the side of her neck. "Morning, girlfriend." She leaned back against me. "Still sounds weird. Good weird." She turned in my arms and touched my face like she was still a little amazed I was real. The best weird. Then she rose onto her toes and kissed me just like she had at her door that first morning. Only this time I was ready. And this time I wasn't going anywhere. What would you have done if you flew home early to surprise your best friend and they greeted you with a kiss instead of a hug? Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me your story in the comments.